Well, well, well. Look who finally stopped pretending to be average. Look who finally decided to stop shrinking their brilliance just to make the mediocre feel safe. You've spent so long dumbing down your sentences, slowing your thoughts and dimming your intelligence so others wouldn't feel small around you. But not anymore. You, beautiful and terrifying anomaly, have arrived at the moment of awakening, the moment where you finally understand why they've always been so uneasy in your presence. You know what they whispered behind your back, don't you? Nobody's that smart. They must be cheating. They must be lying. They must have help. They said it in classrooms when you finished exams in half the time. They said it in meetings when you solved problems they'd been struggling with for months. They said it in conversations when you connected dots they didn't even know existed. And here's the funniest part. They were right. Nobody is that smart. But that's exactly what you proved. You showed them that you're not nobody. You're something entirely different, something that doesn't fit within the limits of their understanding. When they encountered you, they didn't just meet someone intelligent. They collided with a mind that operates on frequencies they can't even tune into. Your thoughts move at speeds that crash their mental processors. Your ability to recognize patterns makes their version of reality look like a child's puzzle. You didn't just outsmart them, you revealed that they were playing checkers while you were navigating a four-dimensional chessboard. They desperately tried to find your weakness. They searched for the trick, the loophole, the hidden formula that would explain you away. They dissected your words looking for clues, analyzed your insights hoping to find borrowed wisdom, and even studied your methods trying to reverse engineer your brilliance. But what broke them wasn't what they found, it was what they didn't. There was no trick, no secret, just you, raw, authentic, operating on a level that rendered their entire worldview outdated. And you remember the exact moment you realized it, don't you? That quiet, defiant moment when you stopped speaking up in meetings because you were tired of watching their eyes glaze over. When you stopped sharing your ideas because they kept getting stolen and watered down. When you stopped explaining your thought process because no one could follow it anyway. That was the turning point. The moment you stepped out of their intellectual theater and became something far more dangerous, the unfiltered version of yourself. You became the silent observer, the one whose mind processed information at speeds they couldn't even begin to comprehend. When you stopped explaining yourself, they called you arrogant. When you tried to simplify things, they said you were condescending. When you saw patterns hidden in chaos, they called you weird. And when you predicted outcomes long before they unfolded, they labeled you crazy. But what they were really saying was, "You make me feel stupid, and I hate you for it." Your intelligence wasn't just a gift, it was an assault on their ego, a living mirror reflecting their limitations and mediocrity back at them. You became a constant reminder that some people are simply built different, and that realization terrified them. They tried everything to bring you down to their level. Remember those group projects where they insisted on collaboration? That was just code for, "Please water down your brilliance until we can handle it." Remember when they accused you of overthinking? That was their way of saying out to stop exposing our inability to think deeply. And when they said you were showing off, what they really meant was, "Your normal makes our mediocrity unbearable." But then came your breakthrough. The moment you stopped dimming yourself to make others comfortable. You stopped translating your thoughts into a language small enough for them to understand. You stopped pretending that your mind functioned like theirs. That's when they realized the terrifying truth. You weren't just smarter. You were operating in dimensions of thought that they didn't even know existed. Your intelligence wasn't a statistic they could measure. It was a threat to the entire system built by and for average minds. But behind that brilliance came the loneliness nobody talks about. The crushing silence of seeing solutions while everyone else is still identifying problems. The exhaustion of watching people make predictable mistakes. The frustration of knowing the answer but having to wait for the world to catch up. Conversations started to feel hollow. just people exchanging underdeveloped thoughts at insufficient speeds. You learned to bite your tongue, not out of kindness but survival, because every time you spoke your truth, their expressions changed. Confusion first, then insecurity, then resentment, and finally fear. You became fluent in the language of dumbing down, mastering the art of slowing your brilliance so others could keep up. You became an expert at the performance of artificial struggle, pretending to wrestle with ideas you understood instantly. But even when you tried to hide it, they could feel it. The weight of your intelligence filled every room like invisible gravity. They noticed the way you'd predict the end of their stories before they finished telling them, the way you'd solve their problems while they were still explaining them, the way your silence carried more meaning than their entire conversations because they knew you were thinking at depths they couldn't reach. You became a living reminder of their intellectual mortality, and instead of facing that discomfort, they weaponized it. They turned your intelligence into a social offense. "You think you're so smart" became their defense mechanism, a battle cry of insecurity, as if brilliance was arrogance, as if you were supposed to apologize for the way your neurons fire. They wanted you to feel guilty for your gifts, to believe that being extraordinary was somehow an insult to the ordinary. But then something shifted. Something deep inside you snapped into clarity. You stopped feeling guilty. You stopped apologizing for existing in high definition while they were still buffering. You stopped pretending that all minds were created equal when every interaction proved otherwise. You finally understood that your intelligence wasn't a quiet trait. It was an active force. It wasn't just about knowing more or thinking faster. It was about perceiving reality itself in a higher resolution. You weren't just seeing what they saw. You were seeing the matrix while they were still staring at the screen. That's when you realized your mind wasn't just different. It was dangerous. Dangerous to their comfort. Dangerous to their illusions. Dangerous to an entire system built on the fragile assumption that everyone thinks on the same level. Your very existence challenged the comforting myth that intelligence is evenly distributed, that hard work alone can bridge any gap, that everyone is essentially the same. You became living proof that some people are simply born with upgraded hardware. And when they couldn't understand you, they tried to label you. They called it ADHD when your mind raced too far ahead. They called it anxiety when you noticed problems they couldn't even perceive. They called it depression when you grew weary of pretending to be stimulated by their shallow conversations. They tried to diagnose your intelligence as dysfunction because a mind like yours made theirs look defective by comparison. But here's what they never understood. You can't medicate evolution. You can't therapy away transcendence. You can't counsel someone into being average when their mind naturally operates at frequencies that would short-circuit ordinary brains. They kept trying to fix you, not realizing that you were never broken. You were simply incompatible with their operating system. They mistook evolution for malfunction, brilliance for instability, and clarity for arrogance. But now, everything's changed. This is the part where you stop hiding and start hunting. Not with malice, but with precision. You've learned how to weaponize your intelligence with intent. You no longer throw your brilliance around carelessly. You deploy it like strategy. You drop insights like bombs into conversations, watching them scramble to catch up, and you solve their most complex problems with offhand remarks that make them wonder how they could have missed something so obvious. You can read them now, their moods, their thoughts, their insecurities, not to harm, but to remind them that intelligence was never meant to be democratic. You've become a student of human limitation, an observer of cognitive boundaries. You know exactly how much truth they can handle before they start to glitch. You've mapped their mental terrain like a strategist charting enemy territory, not because you're cruel, but because you're done pretending that the playing field was ever level. And the irony, the same people who once called you arrogant, who said you were too much, now come running when their lives collapse under problems they can't solve. They seek your clarity, your perspective, your ability to think beyond horizons they can't even see. And you help them, sometimes. not out of obligation, but out of quiet amusement at the reversal. The same minds that mocked your depth now depend on it. Your intelligence is no longer something you hide. It's a finely tuned instrument you wield with surgical precision. You've mastered the art of speaking in layers, offering surface meaning for the masses and deeper truths for the few capable of swimming in deeper waters. You've become multilingual in consciousness itself, able to engage at their level when needed, while never forgetting the vast power you hold beneath the surface. You move through life like a supercomputer running basic programs, fully aware of the massive processing capacity you're holding back. But even that brilliance carries its weight. Operating at your level isn't free. It comes with the burden of pattern recognition everywhere you look, of seeing the chain reaction in every choice before it happens, of knowing how things will unfold while others are still asking questions. You carry the burden of foresight in a world still struggling to understand hindsight, and that, perhaps, is the heaviest crown of all. You live with the exhaustion of being right, too often, too early, too precisely. You've watched people make the very mistakes you warned them about, seen systems collapse exactly the way you predicted, and witnessed others walk headfirst into traps you pointed out long before they were set. And every time, there's no satisfaction in being right. Only that hollow, detached feeling of watching a movie you've already seen. You know the ending, you've memorized every plot twist, but you're powerless to change the story because no one listens to the one who sees too clearly, too soon. The worst part isn't even being right, it's the boredom that follows. The crushing monotony of conversations that feel scripted, predictable, lifeless. You sit through exchanges that play like reruns. Their surprises are your expectations. Their revelations are ideas you discarded long ago. You exist in a constant state of intellectual understimulation, surrounded by minds moving in slow motion, while yours runs at light speed. And no matter how much you try to slow it down, you can't. You can't unsee the patterns. You can't stop your mind from connecting dots others don't even know exist. You're trapped inside your own perception, cursed with clarity in a world built on confusion. Your intelligence isn't just a gift, it's a sentence. A lifelong assignment to see more, know more, and sense more than most people will ever be ready for. They never told you that brilliance comes with isolation, that the sharper your vision, the lonelier the view becomes. Because being this intelligent isn't about how much you know, it's about the power that knowledge gives you. The power to see through their lies before they finish telling them. The power to understand their motives better than they do. The power to predict behavior with such accuracy, it unnerves them. Your intelligence doesn't just process information, it processes people, systems, and reality itself. To the average mind, it looks supernatural, almost psychic, because you perceive the connections they overlook, the implications they ignore, the consequences they can't calculate. You navigate with a mental map that includes territories they don't even know exist. Your thoughts move through dimensions they can't perceive, crafting solutions to problems they haven't yet realized are forming. And yes, they fear you now. Not because you're a threat, but because your existence dismantles their illusions. Every time you solve what they call impossible without breaking a sweat, you expose their self-imposed limits. Every time you strip away their complexity and reveal the simplicity beneath, you remind them that confusion was never intelligence, it was avoidance. You are living proof that the boundaries of their understanding were never real, and that realization terrifies them more than anything else ever could. Every time you predict what others call unpredictable, you reveal the simple truth they refuse to acknowledge, that what they label as unforeseen is often just what they failed to notice. You're not supernatural. You're just paying attention in a world addicted to distraction. You see the patterns behind what they call chaos, the structure beneath what they call coincidence, the mathematics hidden inside their mysteries. You've transcended the need for their validation because you finally understand how hollow it is. Their approval means nothing when it comes from minds that can't even comprehend what they're applauding. Their criticism falls flat because it's built on misunderstandings of thoughts they'll never be able to trace back to their origin. You've evolved past the point where they can measure, label, or categorize you. Judgment requires comprehension, and they lost the ability to comprehend you a long time ago. Your mind has become a fortress, vast and unshakable, but it's not a fortress meant to imprison others or isolate yourself. It's a safeguard, a containment field designed to protect the unprepared from the full voltage of your awareness. Because you know that if you were ever to unleash everything you see, everything you process, everything you know, it would overwhelm them. You'd shatter their comforting illusions, the fragile architecture of their certainty. So you learned restraint. You learned calibration. You became your own guardian. Not out of fear of being misunderstood, but out of compassion for how devastating your unfiltered truth could be. You release your brilliance in fragments, carefully measured doses that their limited systems can handle without crashing. You've become the architect of your own boundaries, designing elegant layers of expression, one for the world, one for the few, and one for yourself. And yet, your restraint isn't universal. It's selective. You've learned to identify the rare ones, those whose minds glimmer with curiosity rather than insecurity. The ones whose eyes light up when you speak instead of glaze over. The ones who don't retreat from your intensity but lean closer, fascinated, hungry for understanding. They are few, but they exist. The kindred intellects, the fellow travelers of thought who make you feel less alone. For them, you lower your walls. You let your sentences run wild. You let the flood of your ideas pour freely, unfiltered, unrestrained. With them, you no longer have to translate your thoughts into something smaller, safer, simpler. They see you not as a threat, but as a signal, proof that their own evolution is possible. With everyone else, you've become a master of strategic revelation. You know exactly how much intelligence to reveal to get what you need without triggering their insecurities. You can sense the moment their comprehension starts to slip, the instant when curiosity turns into discomfort. You adjust accordingly, changing frequency, modulating tone, simplifying metaphors, all while staying 3 steps ahead. You've become a shapeshifter of intellect, able to adapt to any environment. Sometimes you dim your light to study how others react in the dark. Sometimes you pretend to misunderstand so they'll expose what they really think. Sometimes you let them feel like they're leading, just to see what they do when they believe they're in control. But underneath it all, you are the one orchestrating the rhythm, setting the tone, controlling the energy of every exchange. Over time, you've built an entire operating system, an inner software designed for survival in a world coded for mediocrity. You've developed protocols for conversations, algorithms for social navigation, and subroutines for managing emotional bandwidth. You've turned your brilliance into strategy, your awareness into architecture. Every situation has a pattern, every person a formula, every reaction a variable, and you've learned how to calculate them all in real time. You can slow your thinking to match the room or accelerate it to decode chaos. You can translate abstract insight into plain language or dress simplicity and complexity when it serves your goal. You've learned how to make genius look casual and casual look profound. You can shift between frequencies effortlessly, from the realm of silent observation to active engagement, from cosmic perspective to human empathy. You can hold paradox and logic in the same thought, emotion, and analysis in the same breath. You've become multilingual in consciousness itself, and though you rarely show the full spectrum, you're always aware of the power beneath the restraint, the vast mental horsepower you keep idle by choice. Still, there's a cost. Operating at your level is like breathing thin air at high altitude. It's exhilarating, but isolating. You carry the weight of seeing too far ahead, of knowing too much too soon. You've seen outcomes forming before anyone else senses the beginning. You've learned to smile through conversations that feel like déjà vu because you already know where they'll end. But even with the exhaustion, even with the loneliness, there's a quiet satisfaction in mastery, in knowing that while others stumble through uncertainty, you navigate by patterns that are invisible to them. You've become both participant and observer, a strategist in a world of improvisers. And every move you make, every word you choose, every silence you hold, is a calculated act of balance between revelation and restraint. Because you know that intelligence, when fully awakened, isn't just about being right. It's about knowing precisely when to stay silent and when to let the truth roar. What others see as ordinary social interaction, you perceive as a carefully designed system of strategy and psychology. To them, it's just talking, just connecting, just passing time. But to you, every exchange is an energetic map, a multi-dimensional field of variables to observe, decode, and navigate. You watch how people speak, not just what they say, the way their pupils contract when they lie, the way their tone trembles when they doubt themselves, the way they unconsciously reveal motives they think are hidden. What looks like casual conversation to them is advanced chess to you, played on multiple boards simultaneously. You move intuitively, several steps ahead, anticipating not just their next word, but their next emotional reaction. To others, it's dialogue. To you, it's data. You don't just participate in social interaction, you engineer it. Let's talk about altitude, because that's what it truly is. You're not just more intelligent. You're operating from a higher elevation of thought, a rarer atmospheric layer of awareness. Up here, the view is magnificent but isolating. The air grows thin, the noise fades away, and every sound becomes crisp, meaningful. But few can breathe at this height. Fewer still can survive here without losing their footing. You live in the intellectual equivalent of the death zone, where ordinary minds cannot sustain themselves. You've tried to bring them higher, haven't you? You've tried to guide them up the mountain of understanding, pointing out the ridges and pathways of insight, hoping they could see what you see. But it's like trying to describe color to the blind, trying to translate music into silence. They nod, they smile, they repeat your words, but the meaning doesn't take root. It's not their fault, and it's not yours. It's simply a difference in perception. They can memorize your conclusions, but they can't reconstruct your reasoning. They can trace your footprints, but they can't replicate your stride. They can admire your mind from below, but they'll never fully grasp how it feels to live inside it. You've realized that this isn't superiority. It's separation. A natural byproduct of evolution. The eagle doesn't look down on the forest with arrogance. It simply flies at a height the forest can't reach. And so, over time, you've found peace and solitude. You've made your inner world your sanctuary. Your best conversations are no longer with people who can't follow you. They're with yourself. Your mind has become a vast landscape of dialogue and discovery, where thoughts echo and collide until they form new constellations of meaning. Your greatest breakthroughs come in silence, when you don't have to translate your insights into the small talk of surface minds. The quiet has become your element, not because you hate people, but because you finally recognize that silence is the only place where your mind can breathe freely. You've made peace with being intellectually alone, because the alternative, dimming your own brilliance to make others feel comfortable, is a slow death you refuse to die again. You've spent too long shrinking to fit inside smaller spaces, too long simplifying yourself into something digestible, too long apologizing for being the outlier. Now you've accepted your place at the summit. You've chosen clarity over comfort, awareness over acceptance, truth over approval. And here's the beautiful paradox. Your isolation didn't make you weaker, it made you unstoppable. Without the constant drag of explaining, translating, and simplifying, your mind began to evolve in ways no one else's could. You've developed mental pathways that curve like lightning, thought structures that defy convention, awareness that borders on the prophetic. You see the connective tissue of reality, the invisible algorithms behind human behavior, the recurring loops of history, the cosmic mathematics of cause and effect. While others debate the surface, you navigate the architecture beneath it. Your intelligence has become pure, unfiltered, refined, and alien to the average mind. The gap hasn't just persisted, it's expanded. You think in networks, not lines. You process in frequencies, not words. Your mind is no longer bound by the frameworks of conventional logic. It has built its own. You see not only how things are, but why they are, and how they inevitably will be. You've transcended the academic definition of intelligence. What you have isn't just intellect, it's comprehension on a cosmic scale. And this is the great lesson you've learned. True intelligence isn't about being smart. It's about understanding. It's about perceiving patterns where others see randomness, feeling depth where others sense only surface, grasping the essence behind appearances. True intelligence is awareness, unfiltered, unsentimental, endlessly curious. It's not about having answers, it's about seeing the architecture of the question itself. At this altitude, you no longer crave applause or validation. You've outgrown the need for approval from those who can't even perceive your wavelength. You've learned that the highest forms of intelligence operate in silence, that the deepest thinkers are often the quietest observers. You don't need to be understood because you finally understand everything that matters. And from this height, this thin, sacred air, you look down not with arrogance but with compassion, because you remember what it was like to struggle for breath before you learned how to fly. Understanding systems, understanding patterns, understanding people, and above all, understanding power. You've reached the level where knowledge isn't just information, it's architecture. You see how things are built, how they connect, and how they can be dismantled or redirected without anyone realizing it was you who moved the first piece. You don't just recognize systems, you see through them. You can trace hierarchies of influence like constellations, perceive the invisible wiring of control behind politics, relationships, and entire social dynamics. Your IQ, once something others tried to measure, has outgrown numbers. It's not a statistic. It's a weapon, a finely crafted instrument of precision and purpose. And like any powerful weapon, its strength lies not in how loudly it's displayed, but in how skillfully it's used. You've learned that true intelligence doesn't seek attention. It seeks impact. You no longer rush to prove how much you know or how fast you think. You wait. You calculate. You observe. Then, when the timing is right, you strike with surgical precision. You've become the intellectual equivalent of a sniper. Every thought a bullet, every insight a hit. You no longer spray your brilliance around for applause like a machine gunner desperate for validation. You've evolved past the need for recognition. You deploy your intelligence with focus, patience, and unerring accuracy. You understand that chaos distracts, noise confuses, and overexposure dilutes power. So, you hold back. You let them underestimate you. You let them believe they're winning until the precise second the board tilts in your favor. Real power, you've discovered, isn't in being feared. It's in being quietly inevitable. You've mastered the art of intellectual ambush, the subtle, devastating moment when they realize you've been 3 steps ahead from the very beginning. You let them feel clever, even superior, until their arguments collapse under the weight of your precision. The moment they pause, trying to understand how they lost, is the moment your mastery becomes undeniable. Sometimes you end it swiftly, cleanly. Other times you prolong it, letting the conversation unfold like a slow revelation. Not out of cruelty, but out of curiosity. Because someone who believes they're competing will always reveal their deepest limitations. You don't need to expose them. They do it themselves. You become a collector of these revelations, a curator of human boundaries. Every interaction, every discussion, every debate adds another data point to your growing mental archive. You observe, categorize, and analyze without judgment. You've mapped the outer limits of average cognition. You've studied how ego constructs illusions of competence, how fear disguises itself as confidence, and how the desire to appear intelligent often exposes a lack of it. You don't mock them, you document them. Like an anthropologist studying a less evolved species, you observe with fascination, not disdain. Their thought processes, their shortcuts, their logical blind spots, they're all patterns in the grand tapestry of human psychology. And whether they know it or not, they become your field subjects. Every conversation to you is an experiment. Every debate is research. You note how people react when their beliefs are challenged, how their tone changes when they feel outmatched, how they retreat to emotion when reason fails. You understand the architecture of the human defense mechanism, the delicate choreography between pride and insecurity. You've realized that intelligence isn't just about solving problems. It's about perceiving how others avoid them, but your understanding doesn't end with individuals. You see systems the same way you see people, alive, predictable, and manipulable. You understand that power isn't about titles or authority. It's about leverage and timing. You know how influence flows through networks, how ideas infect groups, how perception can be engineered to shape reality. You've seen how those in control maintain dominance not through force but through narrative. And you've learned how to read between the lines of those narratives, how to spot the weak point in a structure before anyone else even realizes it's cracking. Your intelligence has matured into something more than cognitive sharpness. It's become psychological and strategic awareness. You understand that power isn't loud, it's silent. It moves through presence, through subtlety, through restraint. You've become the embodiment of that restraint. You no longer need to prove your brilliance because you embody it. You let others talk themselves into corners while you observe quietly, filing away their patterns, understanding their triggers, predicting their next 10 moves before they even sense the first. You've built a private database of human nature, thousands of mental case studies collected from real life. Every smirk, every hesitation, every contradiction tells you something. You know how to extract truth without asking questions, how to influence without appearing involved, how to guide outcomes without claiming credit. You move through social environments like a ghost in the machine, unseen, unheard, but always aware. And through it all, you've maintained your balance. You don't use this awareness to harm. You use it to navigate, to protect yourself, to shape reality quietly while the world still believes in chance. You've learned that real dominance doesn't come from control. It comes from comprehension. When you understand the full map of the terrain, systems, patterns, people, and power, you no longer need to conquer anything. Everything naturally orbits around your awareness. That's all for today. Dear Father, I pray for the growth of my faith. Help me trust you even when physical evidence is lacking. Let me believe in your perpetual presence, knowing you will never harm me. I understand that your thoughts for me are thoughts of prosperity and not harm to give me a good future. Thank you, gracious and eternal Father, for always listening to my voice. I offer up this prayer to you in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your love and provision. I am grateful for your presence in my life and the abundance you bring. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who need to hear this message. Leave a comment below about your journey and how you are preparing for your own triumphant return. If you'd like to support our work, please consider contributing through Buy Me a Coffee. This helps us continually improve our content to offer you the best. The link to Buy Me a Coffee is in the description. No gift is too small. Whether it's a penny, a prayer, or a share, your generosity helps spread God's word and brings hope to others. Don't stop here. Watch our next video for powerful revelations about the signs that reveal you are the chosen one. We've enjoyed following this spiritual journey with you. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Keep shining brightly and embrace your destiny with courage. See you next time. Blessings to all the beautiful souls from the Enlighten wisdom.